Hi, I'm Anthony from Sydney Backyard Veggies. I'm going to spend some time in the patch today, but instead of working on my veggies, I'm going to be doing something a bit different for a change. I'm actually going to do a lot more work on my fruit trees. We're at the end of July now, about a week away from the start of August, and I meant to have added my fertilizer to a lot of my fruit trees, but I haven't had a chance to do it, so I'm going to do that today. A lot of these trees, especially my citrus, will be flowering in the next month or so. Today I'm going to go and just show you the fruit trees that I have in my patch and how I'm going to go look after them at this point in the season. I have a lot of citrus trees in my patch. I've got 2 mandarins and a lemon tree, and I'm over at my Imperial mandarin here, and I'm going to do a bit of work. This one, I had a lot of fruit come off this plant, of this tree this year, and nice big sized fruit, and I had shown in the previous videos the crop, but I also, just bring it in closer, I also had real big problems with the amount of fruit that I got off this tree, so I had to put in this structure to support the branches while the fruit was on the plant. Now the fruit's been harvested. I've got a few stragglers here which I'll take off, but now I need to add its fertilizer because it is going to start flowering, you know, coming late August, so I'm anxious to get that fertilizer in place. But before I add that fertilizer, I'm gonna have to do a bit of work just around the base of the tree. Citrus don't like having much competition, and as much as I keep the place weeded, it's an ongoing job, especially with this chickweed. So I'm gonna come and just first of all just remove a lot of this rubbish, and then I'll apply my fertilizer. For mature citrus trees, in my experience, I don't like adding too much nitrogen, especially on my lemons. I generally like to add more potash and more phosphorus or superphosphate. So I'm going to be adding half a container of chicken manure pellets, dynamic lifter. I'm just going to spread that gently around the base. I wouldn't go using anything like blood and bone or anything stronger than that. In addition to that, I like to add some potash and some superphosphate. Again, the idea behind my my fertilizer mix is to really put a lot more potassium and phosphorus in the fertilizer over the nitrogen. So using the chicken manure and the potash and the superphosphate, you'll get a more balanced, I find a more balanced fertilizer, but more of the focus is on the potash and the superphosphate. Another thing that citrus like is calcium, and now generally I would add dolomite lime, just a little bit of sprinkle of dolomite lime, but with the lime that we add, it changes the pH in the soil, makes it more alkaline. So I've learnt a trick where you use shell grit. This is the stuff I just feed to the chickens, standard stuff you can get from your produce store, and although it does break up over time and slowly releases that calcium, it does add that calcium to the soil over time without changing the pH. Now I've been doing that to this, I've been adding shell grit to this tree for the last 4 years now, so I'm just at the moment just topping up the shell grit, but at 8 years now I'm starting to see results of that with the fruit that I'm getting at the moment. Once I've added all that fertilizer, I like to mulch the base of the tree. Now I generally put cow manure, half a bag of cow manure around the base. Today I'm going to be putting some chicken manure. I'm going to try to give chicken manure a bit of a go this year to see if I can add a few more nutrients to the soil. And it's essentially just as a mulch, just sitting on top of that fertilizer. I am not looking at mixing it in. The tree roots of citrus are very shallow, and as I'm putting down half a bag, I want to look at arranging the manure so it's not sitting up hard up against the base of the tree. You'll be encouraging rots around collar rot around the tree, so around the base. So just spreading it out just as a light mulch, making sure you remove that manure away from the base of the tree. And there's just a light spread, just bringing the compost away from the base. There you go. That's now done. This is now set for the year. I might come back after the fruit's set and maybe add a second round of fertilizer, say in about February, March. But I'll just play it by ear about how it's looking at how the tree is going and whether it's got, if it looks like it's doing okay without any additional. But generally speaking, I apply once a year my fertilizer. I will water this in the first instance, and then I'll have the irrigation sitting on these underneath these trees, especially in the summer months while they're flowering and while they're fruiting. It's important to keep them well watered. A little water often, as I find, is the best way it works. I'm expecting this tree to start flowering next month or so, start flowering, and hopefully I'll be harvesting next season's fruit in about May, June next year. So it's worth the time and the effort, especially when you can supply kids lunches and snacks from a couple of trees in your backyard. It's really, really rewarding. Before I move on from this tree, I want to have a quick look to see if there's any obvious signs of disease or damage on these plants, and I'll bring you in close and I'll show you what I'm actually seeing at the moment. So just having a quick look at the tree and bringing you in closer, and a couple of things that I'm seeing at the moment is what would look like potential signs. Two things. Looks like old damage, old leaf miner damage that's shown on these leaves, but more interested in the dark tinges that I'm seeing around these leaves and the curliness of the leaves, and that gives to me a sign of aphids or other sap-sucking insects that have been on the tree. Especially as I come into spring, I'm going to start seeing a lot more aphids, especially on your citrus trees, and I will need to start spraying from now just to control them. Also, I'm going to be seeing leaf miners. Now that's old damage, but as the new growth starts coming through on the lemon trees, I'm going to be seeing a lot more damage. So really need to start paying attention to them. And finally, around August, September, stink bugs are going to be a real issue in my garden. And again, I personally like to treat them by spraying, but I like to get in there early and spraying for them before they get before they do too much damage to the fruit. When it comes to dealing with pests in your citrus trees, in my context, I prefer to spray. I especially struggle with trying to control the stink bugs, the scale and aphids. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to stink bugs, I use pyrethrum. I find if you give them 2 applications of pyrethrum about a week apart each, it will control most, if not all, of your stink bugs. And the idea is to get in there early and really spray those insects and get rid of it, because they will damage your plant if left unchecked. For sap-sucking insects and the like, especially aphids and scale, I find multiple applications of pyrethrum will help and will control them. Along it will also control the leaf miner. Now, if you're not getting great success out of the pyrethrum, I have in the past used a combination of pyrethrum and white oil, and that works as well. I do like to do my spray now and every month up to flower, and as soon as the flowers have set, I then start my spray again, especially when I'm expecting most of the aphids to turn up, which is in that August, September time, and then in the mid to late autumn time. Getting onto those aphids early will limit the damage that they do to your plants. For my citrus trees and for all my other trees as well, I do like to use a little bit of anti-rot. This is to treat collar rot, more of a preventative than a cure. I have struggled with collar rot in the past on my lemon trees, and I did spray this as an emergency to clear it up, and it did save that tree. But I do now apply this as a preventative once a year at about this time, just before they flower. I will apply these sprays. I'll apply this once a year, and I'll apply it with my white oil and pyrethrum, and then I'll apply just the pyrethrum and white oil monthly throughout the season, outside of the flowering times. So now I've finished adding fertilizer to that mandarin tree. I'm going to take you to the second mandarin tree that I've got. This one here is my honey murcott, and I've had this one planted at the same time as my Imperial, but it's not been doing as great as the Imperial mandarin has done over the years. It's actually been quite small and stagnant. So I'll show you what I'm doing here for its fertilizer, but I'll give you a quick rundown of what the tree looks like at the moment. So this is the honey murcott, and this tree was planted 6 years ago as well. I do find that this tree hasn't been doing as well as my Imperial mandarin, and they were planted at the same time. What I'm looking at doing here is trying to encourage that really fast growth on the tree to make it a bigger tree. It's actually struggling. It just looks like it's been struggling, a bit lethargic. So last year I did add sulfate of ammonia to this plant rather than just the standard low nitrogen option that I put it on the other tree. What I'm going to do is clear up all that grass, and instead of adding chicken manure pellets, I'm going to be applying a boost of sulfate of ammonia, and that should then that should really help it put on a lot of growth. I think the grass around the base isn't doing it any favors, but what I'll do is I'll clear that grass, water in some sulfate of ammonia, and then add the other fertilizers as I did for the mandarin tree. Just adding my potash, superphosphate, and shell grit. Finishing it off with half a bag of chicken manure, just as a mulch, making sure it doesn't sit around the tree. So I've added that fertilizer and mulched the tree. I'm hoping that that sulfate of ammonia hit will really put some extra growth on this tree and actually make it a larger tree than what it is at the moment. It's actually looking quite skinny and just weak, so I'm hoping that that would sort it out, and I'll come back and report on how it developed over the next few months. The fruit, I need to start picking this fruit off. It's just a little tart still at the moment, but I will start harvesting them this week for kids' lunches. Just coming over to my citrus, my lemon tree this time. This is now it's the same treatment as my Imperial mandarin, but it needs to harvest all the fruit, and on top of that I need to do some pruning at the top. It's just getting too big, and I'll just quickly show you what this tree, how big this tree looks at the moment. I'll bring it over, and the tree, I reckon it's close to 4 meters tall now. It's just getting 3.5, 4 meters tall. It's just getting a bit too much height on the top, and when I planted it in this corner I thought it would be a good idea to provide some shading over the bed, but I'm finding now in winter it's really shading a lot of the patch, so I just want to try to get a bit of a sight. I want to show you, actually I'll just get some fruit. Now I made a comment earlier in the video about too much nitrogen and what it does to citrus, especially lemon trees. I added a lot of blood and bone to this tree about 3.5 years ago, and what it did was it made the tree grow really big, which was great, but it made a very thick-skinned lemon, a lemon that wasn't juicy, and it had just a really thick skin, and the excessive nitrogen caused that. So what I have been doing since then is trying to work that nitrogen through the tree, and so I've really cut back on any nitrogen, additional nitrogen to this tree. And look, I am starting to get smaller fruit, and you know, just one over here. You know, I am trying to get smaller fruit, which is great. Nothing that's overly big, but you're still seeing evidence of those really big pieces of fruit coming through. So I know, mistakes you learn. Try to stay away from too much nitrogen on your mature lemon trees. And while I have you here as well, I just want to show you the collar rot damage that I also mentioned previously. As you can see there, this is what I was dealing with 2 years ago, and this is still showing some signs of some collar rot. This is actually a disease that goes into the tree, and actually if you keep it untreated, it will damage the whole tree and kill it. So I was able to get it early enough with that spray, the anti-rot spray. But the idea is now I'm just doing a preventative spray once a year, just to make sure I stay on top of it. Now this tree is doing fine, but it's good to stay on top of these things before they become a serious issue. On another general note, the tree is starting to flower, and this is next season's crop, so it's getting more and more important to get rid of a lot of that fruit. And it's actually and just prune it a bit just to bring it down. I'm gonna go get my ladder and start picking these lemons. I'll show you my haul, and then I'll come through and give it a quick prune. Just finished harvesting most of those lemons, and I've got myself a full crate here. And you know, this is what happens when you put too much nitrogen in your lemon trees. You get absolutely monster fruit. This is easy, half a kilo lemon. I'll go probably weight it up a bit later, but I'm hoping that over the next season most of that nitrogen washes through, and so we'll start getting some smaller fruit like this again, which I tend to be more juicier and better producing than the big ones. There's still a few stragglers needing to be picked, but I want to go up there and actually start pruning while I am harvesting. And I'll bring you in close and show you how I'm going to prune this tree. What I'm looking at doing is actually taking off the tops of these branches, and I'm looking at taking off the top maybe 30 to 40 centimeters, especially these longer ones at the top here. The reason is it's just getting too tall. It's just getting really, really difficult to harvest. And I might even look at potentially pruning some of the internal branches just to open up this tree a bit. It's just, again, there's ones, especially that one in the back there. I'm not sure if you can read that properly, but it is taking up the whole center of the tree. Hopefully, I'll try to see how much I can do this afternoon, and hopefully if I can do that before sunset. I'll get onto that right now. I've finished my prune at the moment, and it does look a bit drastic, but the whole idea was to open it up a bit from the inside and reduce the height. So I tip pruned a lot of those higher branches. Look, it does look quite scraggly at the moment, and I may come back in a couple of months' time and reshape the tree. And obviously my dad would have maybe have a few comments onto how best to further shape it, but I just have to bite the bullet on it and get rid of a lot of that top heavy growth. I still also need to come back and add my manure and amendments, but it's that time of day where I might just do it tomorrow and give it a good water, and hopefully it'll be a good season. There's still a lot of flowers showing on the tree, so hopefully I'll get a decent crop off it. And before I wrap up this video, I just want to show you where my patch is at in preparation for spring. As discussed last week, I came through and planted this whole bed full of pak choi. Ended up getting 5 punnets of seedlings planted in here, and I'll just bring you closer. You can just see it's about 12-14 rows of pak choi, and they're looking really good, and they'll be ready to harvest in 3 to 4 weeks time. Gonna come and harvest some of my red cabbages this week. These are ready to go as well, so I'll be harvesting them. Now that I've pruned the lemon tree, I'm going to be planting my cauliflower in this patch, and because this area is starting to clear, I'm going to plant my next round of broccoli in this patch as well. This patch is almost ready to almost finished harvesting, so I've got these last couple of heads here. I'll get them out next few days, and I'll be able to just dig this whole bed over and plant it out with more broccoli. Although it's still quite cold, I am noticing that the garden is responding to the change in seasons, and as we're starting to head to spring, I'm finding that my leafy greens that I planted out and my cabbages here that I planted out in the midst of winter are really powering along. So, and my last planted sugar snap peas, you can just see right there, are looking absolutely amazing, and I'm hoping to start harvesting them soon. This is the best planting of the season. The rest really didn't do as well as I hoped, but I'll keep you posted on how these ones produce. They should be getting a few more sugar snap peas over the next few weeks. Thanks a lot everyone for watching. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you in the next one.